Hey, folks, welcome back to another UCRP, Utah County Republican Party podcast. I hope you've been enjoying these. Had a great conversation with Frank Mylar on the last one. I am here today with Senator Heidi Balderree. And Heidi and I have kind of a different relationship. I've known her for quite a while. We had the special election back in October, and I was involved in that. And we've had just some awesome conversations. And then I actually got to go sit with her on the Utah Senate floor for part of the session this year. And that was a ton of fun. And so I'm really excited to have her on, kind of talk about who she is and why she's running and all of that kind of a thing. So Heidi, I've been asking all the candidates just to start out, what are the things that you want people to absolutely know about you?
Excellent question. So I think one of the most important things, at least it is for me when I'm looking to have the kind of elected officials that I want in office, is are they responsive? Are they transparent? And I haven't always had that. So I have tried to be that for everyone. So, for example, I held 3 town halls before the session even started between October and January. Then during the session, the 7-week session, on 4 of the Saturdays, I had town halls as well. I sent out 2 emails each week, one from my campaign email side, and then one that went a little bit more into the weeds from my Senate campaign, or not campaign, but my Senate email. I recorded a short video each week. I know some people prefer video content. And I also, after the session, since the session, I've held 16 public events. So I have worked extremely hard to answer every email, phone call, and text. And that's the kind of legislator that I am, because I think that's the kind of legislator that everyone should be.
Yeah, I love it. It's so interesting too. It seems like kind of the further away or the further up the chain you get, the harder people are to find. But I mean, even in the local area, like my house rep, I see him during campaign season, right? And I know I could get a hold of him if I wanted to, probably. But yeah, you're out there, like you're saying, hey, come talk to me. And that's different, right, than what you typically get from folks. And the other thing I'm just going to add on to that I've personally had from you is, if I have a question about something, if I have a concern about something, if I'm thinking, okay, why is Heidi thinking this way or voting this way, you've just straight up told me, right? I don't feel like I get any of the political spin or BS or anything like that. If you haven't figured out, I live in Heidi's district. And so I tend to connect with her a whole lot more. So I think you do such a good job on that. And I'm sure it's a ton of work.
It really is. This job requires a lot of bandwidth. And one of the things that was really a precious moment to me was the first day of the session. My husband said, oh, yeah, let me drive you up to the Capitol. My husband works remotely, and he typically only goes into the office each Wednesday. So what started out as a day one, he actually worked down in his downtown Salt Lake office each of those 45 days so that he could drive me to and from work, which gave me an hour, or 2 hours. So 1 hour each way, 2 hours back in my day so that I could either put on my makeup, answer emails, phone calls, texts, read bills. So this 2-hour bonus gift that my husband did for me was it was unexpected, and it was really wonderful. But having a good support is really important. My kids are older, so, in addition, most senators, right, have their day job, including me. And so it requires a lot, I think, to do the job well. And that's something that I certainly, have invested in the time to do what it takes. And, the nice thing is I try to post frequently on social media so people can see the work that I'm doing for the district. And like you mentioned, you actually came up and sat with me on the floor. I invited all 150 delegates from the special election.
Oh, really?
Sit up. Yeah. And of course, people who aren't delegates too. Anyone who wanted to come sit with me on the floor had the opportunity. And that's something that I've extended to anyone. I think it's great that people like you did. You could see my process, see my spreadsheet, see how I work, see how it all works. And that's very important to me, is to remain transparent and to be out there doing the work for you.
Yep, absolutely. Now, I have to say, so I got involved at the caucus for 2016, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to tell my story. I was told it before. It was kind of a fluke thing, but I wound up the precinct chair. And so I'm going to all these things as delegates, and I remember seeing you at those. So
Mm-hmm.
how long have you been doing this, and how did you get started?
Yeah, almost 11 years. So, I've always been a registered Republican and voted in in each election. The difference is, I actually subscribed to the print newspaper back in the day, and it was very important to me
Old
to stay,
school.
yeah, to stay abreast of what was going on in the community, so that when it came time to vote, I knew the issues, I knew the candidates, and while I was raising my family.
Yep.
And then the way I actually cut my teeth in politics was it was centered around the prison relocation. So as you well
Mhm.
recall, we had several cities that were on the short list to move the prison to, and that
Right.
included Saratoga Springs, where I live, and Eagle Mountain, West Jordan, Tooele, etc. And I went to a cottage meeting thinking, yeah, I'm going to pass out a flyer or be of some type of help. And that actually spiraled into so much more. I found myself learning how to navigate the legislative system, how to testify in committee, how to organize rallies, write op-eds, be interviewed on radio and television. And and then I became a trusted resource for my community. And where they were actually reaching out to me saying, "Hey, this is coming before us on the agenda in the city council. Can you rally the troops?" And then from one thing it led to another. I found myself at a county board of adjustment meeting where I was talking about the violations of the dump that is near my home, and fighting against county commissioner salary increases at the county
Mhm.
commission, and et cetera, et cetera. It really spiraled. I became a delegate. I became a precinct chair, and eventually I ran and won to serve the county party as the secretary for two years. And I also have served for 8 years as a member of the state central committee. And I really enjoyed that particular role because we meet quarterly. It's a 2-year term. I served 4 terms. That allowed me to forge relationships across the state and be with the influence makers and those who are making a difference all around the state of Utah. And so I really enjoyed that term. Um, we were looking at changing our Utah County form of government, and I was appointed to be part of a board called the Good Governance Advisory Board. And on
Mhm.
that board were, senators, mayors, and me. And so, you know, things that were happening in the county. I actually was appointed to serve a 3-year term as a member of the Utah County Planning Commission. And so that first year I served as a member, the second year as a vice chair, and my third year as the chair of the Utah County
Mhm.
Planning Commission. So, the nice thing is there is no dearth of opportunities to serve. And I took advantage of as many of those as I could because that's what I'm drawn to is how can I help best serve my community?
Yep, absolutely. And it's interesting too because all of these different layers and levels of things that you've done, they all inform in different ways how this stuff works, right? And so,
Mhm.
as county planning commission, right? I'm sure it gave you all kinds of um, information and experience where you could then take that back to some of the issues that you're seeing and say, "Hey, look, this sounds like a good idea, but I know how these things work, and so I'm opposed to or I fully support this particular bill."
Mhm. Yeah, one of the other, I guess I would call it a training ground, if you will, experiences that I had that informed who I am was the time that I spent on the Women's State Legislative Council. So
Mm,
the Women's State Legislative Council meets every week during the legislative session, and I participated in many different roles in that organization. I was the second vice president, I was a historian, I was a chaplain, and I also served over, I think it was around 12 different legislative study committees as a chair. And as a bipartisan organization, every biennium or every 2 years, it changes from a Democrat to a Republican president and back and forth. And you're always paired in your roles of service with the opposite party member. So you
Mhm.
work hand in hand with those who think differently than you, and we meet in a group all together. And it's really important when you have to build consensus, right? Part of being an effective legislator is being able to be persuasive and help people to see things from your side of view. And I think you actually craft better arguments when you can understand where other people are coming from. And so it was a really great opportunity to get outside of the vacuum that we sometimes get sucked into, and really learn to work well with those of differing beliefs.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's important to have those conversations, not just to bring people around or to understand, but it really does, I guess, refine the thinking around a lot of these ideas. I really appreciate the work that you do there.
Thank you.
Um, so as we kind of get in and start talking about, okay, you have this process for things, and you're involved in these different areas. Um, like what is your process for evaluating a bill, or an organization, and how to get involved and things like that?
Right. Well, I think we all have the same amount of hours in a day, and how I decide what I'm going to do is what kind of an impact, what influence can I have. And actually, one of the things that helped me become who I am was my volunteerism, working as a volunteer for Americans for Prosperity Utah.
Mhm.
And not only was I able to help on issues here locally, we were also able to take on federal and national issues. For example, one of the things I'm really proud of that I was a part of was when we were able to help flip the seat to get a Republican governor in the state of Virginia. So if you
Ah, yeah.
remember, I actually went down to Virginia Beach and I knocked doors to help get him into office. That was super fun, and I've done that in other states as well. But I've worked on things such as, if you remember, Our Schools Now.
Mhm.
We stopped that. We stopped that bad idea um, when the state decided that they wanted to do a sales tax increase initiative, and they actually used
Mhm.
taxpayer dollars to go around the state to market a bad idea. I was right there at the forefront at several of those meetings fighting against that bad idea.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to federal things, I fought, or even statewide, I fought against. I was up at the Capitol testifying against Medicaid expansion. Federally, I worked on opposing OSHA Biden mandates. Um, I have worked before I got into office, helping to lower our state income tax rate. And this year, I was actually the co-sponsor of the income tax amendments, which reduced our income tax. Um, I've been a part of helping support other good candidates get into office, such as our very own Utah grown U.S. Senator Mike Lee, where
Mhm.
with Americans for Prosperity Utah, we helped make over 400,000 phone calls to get him reelected.
Oh,
That's
wow.
separate from whatever his campaign was. That was just grassroots efforts. Because
Mhm.
what I've noticed is when we mobilize people just like you and me, we can have a tremendous impact on policy and on local governance just by getting involved.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Um, Man, I really want to have you back on to talk about, okay, how do you get involved? But we're here to kind of talk more about the campaign and the election, and why people want to support somebody like you. I know in this legislative session you had what, 3 4 bills that you brought up, which is interesting considering you were elected in October, and
Mhm.
so what, you were like 4 or 5 months into the job, you're already pushing bills. What were those bills?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So the first one was, we have local licensing amendments, and it doesn't sound very sexy, but it was actually the bill that I was most proud of. And the reason for it is because at the onset, this bill was just supposed to be literally a one-word change. And what happened was, I ended up, having so many stakeholders that I participated with, that we actually crafted a much better piece of legislation than a one-word change. So when this idea was floated to me to look at our local revenue bonds and the referenda for local revenue bonds, So, for example, let's say your city wants to build a new library or fire station or whatnot with a revenue bond. Um, well, actually, since we're past May, the new law has gone into effect. But previously, it would be that you would have to, as soon as that city council or county commission voted to pass a bond, us as citizens, we had only 30 days to collect signatures to try to overturn it, and that clock started when the bond passed. So,
Oh, wow.
so let's say you're at that meeting in the city council or county meeting, and you think, "Oh gosh, we can't have this," but you got to go home and speak with your partner and talk to your friends and decide if this is worth the effort to try to overturn this. And right, that's a very important part of our Constitution is the ability to
Right.
redress our government, and a referendum is that option. And so, what happened is I went to when I was presented with this idea. They also considered changing the amount of voters that needed to sign that referendum, and the current it is still today number is 20% of registered voters, which is basically
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
1 in 5, right? And now, especially as an elected official, I appreciate representative government. If we have mob rule where we just say we need 50% plus one, that's not what our founders envisioned. That's not who we are. So as I talked with some of these mayors and city council members from the district, they all universally said, you know what? Do not touch that threshold. It needs to be sufficiently hard to overturn representative government. And I agreed. And I didn't touch that part of the legislation. But what we did look at it was extending the amount of days that citizens could have to collect those signatures.
Right.
And so, I thought, let's start at 60. It's currently 30. Let's go for 60. What we landed on was 45. That's still roughly 2 more weeks to gather signatures. And now you have 5 days to register. But you also have the ability now where the clock used to start ticking once that vote passed. It doesn't start ticking now until you collect your first signature, which really extends that amount of time. And the other part that's important to me is there are different sections of code for different kinds of referenda. And in this particular piece of code, what we found was it was an island that was missing this transparency piece. It didn't say that you had to mention who your co-sponsors were when they filed. And so now we made sure that we added that piece in so that it's transparent as well. And I worked with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and I worked with different cities who had been a part of this lacking transparency piece that took issue with it. And I worked with the Utah Taxpayers Association, and I worked with the Utah Cities of Leagues and Towns to craft this really remarkable piece of legislation that was just going to be one word, and it turned out to be so much better.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of those changes made things a lot better. What's the process for this? Because it sounds like you kind of walked us through the process of what the bill was and what it did, but did somebody bring this to you, or was it something that you found on your own? And then from there, how did you get the input that made it what it was?
Yeah, it was the Utah Taxpayers Association.
Okay.
And again, one of the things that I bring to the table as your legislator is that I've been working with organizations such as Libertas, Utah Taxpayers Association, Utah Parents United, and other conservative organizations for a very long time. And because, I went from volunteer to becoming the community engagement director of Americans for Prosperity Utah. So through the course of my service and work opportunities, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with conservative organizations. And so they see me already as an ally, which was a benefit for the district, coming to the table with those relationships already formed so that they see me as a person to promote conservative legislation.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I did. Actually, so another bill that I did was in conjunction with one of my other conservative allies, and that is Libertas. And some of you are familiar with the legislation called the Lemonade Law that was passed in 2017 by our former senator from the district. And basically that said, if you're a kid who wants to do occasional work, you shouldn't have to have a permit or a business license to operate. And so we've enjoyed that since 2017. However, I thought, here we have seniors in high school who are 18, but they're no longer considered a minor by virtue of
Right.
their age. And I really wanted to make sure that those older kids were taken care of, right? If let's say you're a twin, or you've got friends who are 18 and they're able to do their side hustle without this, onerous regulation, why shouldn't those seniors in high school also be able to
Right.
take advantage? So now the law says it's under the age of 19, so that we cover our seniors in high school, and we can encourage youth entrepreneurship in the state, and let people get a taste of what it's like to operate without a heavy hand of government.
I love that. So when you get these bills, so you said that Libertas brought you this one,
Mhm.
Utah taxpayer. I don't remember.
Taxpayers
Anyway,
Association. Mhm.
right? They brought you the other one. So what's your process at that point, right? I'm assuming you talk to them and kind of figure out what needs to be done, but you also said that other people had input. So how do you work through that?
Well, I think it's really important to consider several different opinions, because we craft better legislation
Hmm.
when we're involving more stakeholders. The more stakeholders that are involved, right, then there's less friction when we actually, whether we get to committee, when we get to these things. Really, it's that legwork that we do prior to session, or at least
Hmm.
even prior to presenting in committee or on the floor, that makes the bills pass. And I
Right.
actually am proud to say that my three bills all passed unanimously out of the House and Senate committee, and unanimously out of the House and Senate floor. And by the way, my Democrat colleagues, two of my bills, they made the favorable recommendation to vote it out of committee.
Oh,
And
nice.
again, that happens because, I really actually enjoy people, all people.
Hmm.
And, people can criticize me for being friends with so and so and so and so. And I make no apologies, because I think people are great and we might have differing ideas, but I really just enjoy people. And I think this is evidence, as you can see, what happened with these bills is because I gained that consensus early on in the process. And yeah, sometimes you have to gain consensus through the process and along the way, but it certainly makes it easier when you're approachable, when you're willing to listen to all the ideas, and it helps really get things moving. The last bill that I wanted to talk about was for our military members.
Hmm.
And I actually did a couple of bills, but the one that I was the Senate sponsor for is military licensing amendments. And we have a large portion of our state that is reliant upon military careers, and they're a huge part of our GDP. And I don't know about you, but when our service members are, whether they're active duty, reservists, or National Guardsmen or women, are called
Hmm.
upon to serve our state, they do so whether it's their kid's birthday, their family vacation. They just go and they serve. And the last thing we want them to have to worry about is whether or not their occupational or professional license is expired while they're serving, and what they're going to do about that.
Hmm.
So this bill says they have 90 days to re-up their license, and we're going to remove that penalty, and we're going to waive the fee for them. And so, um, you know, with the work that I did there, and the other bill that I was a floor sponsor of over in the House, that helped our military to our National Guard to be able to offer recruitment and retention bonuses. There's a problem nationwide, and even in the state of Utah, with having our adequate numbers for,
Hmm.
for preserving our security. And so these retention bonuses and recruitment bonuses allowed us to be more safe as a state. And the nice thing is that particular bill had a $0 fiscal note. And that's because it just simply allowed them the flexibility to transfer or
Right.
reallocate those dollars.
That's awesome. And so I spent some time while I was on my mission with military, about 7 months. And then,
Oh,
I
wow.
have family members that have been in the military, and I mean, anything we can do to help these people out, especially like you said, on some of these professional licensure things where, yeah, I mean, you got called up. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not your fault. Yeah, by all means. Yeah, let's do everything we can to help these folks out.
Mhm.
Um, I'm kind of curious as we kind of flip the script a little bit here and go into, okay, somebody else brought up a bill, right? So it's not Heidi talking to people who, recognize an issue and bring it to her, but it's okay. Hey, I'm Senator so and so, and I have a bill that I want to pass. What's your process looking into those to decide whether or not you're going to vote for it?
So, first and foremost, is it the proper role of government? There, one of the biggest observations and takeaways that I have is that government has continued to supersize its role in the lives of its citizens.
Hmm.
And um, frankly, that's not okay. And
Right.
there's a difference between niceties and necessities. And so, as I look at a bill, first and foremost, is it the proper role of government? Just because it's a nice thing to be done doesn't mean that the government should be doing it. And
Right.
there are a lot of bills, and I'm sure will continue to be more bills that fit this bill. Let's look at the stadium bills, for example. I was one of,
Right.
yeah, I was one of a handful of legislators to vote no on those bills. I applaud the vision to revitalize
Yeah.
these areas of the state and to bring, professional sports teams. That's exciting. And
Yeah,
I
it
would
is.
encourage them to do that on their own dime.
Yep.
So, and there is a lot of pressure from leadership and others to support these bills. And they did pass, but they didn't do it with my vote.
Right.
And one of my planks on my website before I was elected, and it still is today, is anti-capital cronyism. And
Hmm.
it's not the job of government to pick winners and losers.
Yep.
And I will continue to call it out and vote against it as I see these bills come along.
Yep.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense. And to be perfectly honest, yeah, I mean, it felt like, especially on those bills, it was, I felt like I was like, dude, get out of my pocket. Leave my wallet alone, right? Because
Right.
yeah, I mean, maybe I'll go play or go watch sports, right? I mean, I love a good Real Salt Lake game, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, why should I pay for a stadium for a multi-million dollar business to come in, right? Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
it's
you,
interesting.
you you hit one of the issues that makes me mad.
Yeah. So there was a longitudinal study done over 30 years and 130 stadiums
Hmm.
nationwide. Basically, if regardless of where your personal feelings are, if you're just looking at data,
Yeah.
data does not support that this is an economic benefit to the state. Because what happens? We've observed it time and time again. There's a few outliers who do well despite the model, but
Hmm.
over basically, if you're looking at these stadiums, what happens? They build the stadium on the backs of taxpayer dollars, these huge subsidies and
Right.
incentives or taxes. And then you're left after 8, 10, 12 years, someone else dangles a nice carrot.
Hmm.
Come to our state or our city, we'll build you a newer, shinier stadium. And so they leave, and then you're left holding the bag. And
Right.
these bonds or taxes, typically 30 years, and then they never usually fulfill that life cycle. So I certainly demoralizing to think that we're doing it on the backs of
Yeah.
an optional sales tax for that area. And I just think that they can do it. They can do it without the support of government.
Yep. Absolutely. So, what bills are you bringing forward in the next session? I know that you had like an interim meeting recently, within last week, I think.
Mm-hmm. We did, yeah. So, yeah, I submitted several items for study. One of them is about hardening the grid from electromagnetic impulse attacks,
Oh,
uh,
thank you.
EMP.
The
Uh,
solar flares, right? I've heard people hypothesizing it doesn't even have to be a bad actor. It just could be, hey, we're in the path of the wrong thing from the sun, and we're out of luck.
Right. We've seen that happen in Texas. Now, we've seen tsunami incidents such as
Mhm.
Fukushima. We're not in any danger of a tsunami here in Utah, but whether it's solar flare or just cybersecurity
Right.
attacks, which are definitely, it's just a matter of time. And I see this as a good Samaritan move where we just need to take care. Think of what would happen to our economy one day, a week of our grid going down. And this is something that we need to look at ASAP. And so
Mhm.
I am really excited to dig in and be a part of that. And I've been working with some of these people who are really experts in this field, like Bob McKenty. And again, these are people and conversation and ideas that I've had with people throughout the state as I'm exposed to bigger, better ideas as I increase and build my network. Um, Another one that I'm doing is I work a lot on occupational licensing reform
Mhm.
and basically getting government out of the way so that people can get to work,
Yes.
removing barriers. And this is something I did through my work before entering the legislature, and it's something that I'm continuing to do now. For example, we've got a gal who wants to do her own nail school. So in the cosmetology industry, right, if you want to get certified, you actually need more hours. It takes more hours to get certified to become a cosmetologist in the state of Utah than it does to become an EMT.
Really?
Yes, really. You know,
Wow.
you know, the job of government here is safety. But if it's something outside of safety, really, then they need
Right.
to remove those obstacles and barriers. So anyway, this gal wants to do nail school, just nails.
Mhm.
Not waxing, not tanning, not eyebrows, eyelashes, facials, etc. Just nails. So wouldn't it be great if people could pay less money and spend less time to do just the thing that they want to
Right.
do and not be, required to order the full package. So,
Mhm.
but there are major obstacles for this gal who's trying to open her nail school, and so we're trying to look at how we can remove those as a state for people who want to have different ideas and different options for potential workers. Um, Another one is an income tax exemption for W-2 employees. This would imply, remember this bill, this lemonade law, um,
Mhm.
it would only apply to entrepreneurs, not wage earners who get a W-2, right? This
Okay.
occasional work owner. And so this is something that I'm looking at. I've been asked to run another military bill. I've been seen as a great ally with the two bills that I did last session, and they've got another one for me with military spouses and the 401k portability issues when they're
Mhm.
moving, and making sure that they can do so when they move and not lose out just because of their move. So and then I'm super excited about a squatters bill that is modeled after Florida legislation. Now,
Mhm.
in the state of Utah, we actually have some ability to evict those who are not there correctly, but um, this would do a couple things. So let me just look that up for you. But exactly, here we go. Um, Basically, it was going to allow the property owners to file an affidavit showing that the property does not belong to those who are, unlawfully
Mhm.
occupying it. And there would be some teeth attached to it, which is a first-degree felony for fraudulently selling or leasing the property, and a second-degree felony for damage to a home. Um, Sheriff is going to be required to serve the notice and remove the occupants without delay, and it does allow for a cause of action in the event that someone is wrongfully removed from a property.
Right.
And perjury charges can also be charged for wrongfully filing the affidavit. This bill is long overdue, and people need to feel a sense of security,
Mhm.
well-being, and be safe from someone essentially stealing their home. And
Right.
so that's something that I've been working on that I'm also excited about. Um, there are lots of ideas that have been presented to me, and still chewing on some of these ideas. But I know in particular we have Mark Allen who would like to get cameras into courtrooms. The state
Hmm.
Supreme Court and appellate court cases are already online,
Right.
but the district courts are not. And so looking in to see if we can get them online. And
Hmm.
again, there are so many good ideas that come from our constituents. And sometimes we try them and they don't make it all the way through the process. But I'm certainly willing to try because the best ideas come from all of us. There's 130,000 residents and growing in our district.
Hmm.
And between us, we come up with great ideas and we can make not only our district better, but the state better.
Yep, absolutely. So let's say that somebody watching this is that, they have an idea, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they recognize a problem, they don't have an idea on how to solve it. You mentioned you've been doing the town halls and that you've been available for people. So how do they find you?
So they can go to the legislative website, which has actually won awards nationally, and get my information or any legislator's information. So they can go to LE, which stands for legislature, le.utah, spell it out, le.utah.gov. And they can go under legislators, then to senators. And we actually have pictures. So, you don't remember my difficult last name, you can look at my photo and see that my email is listed there, hbalderree at le.utah.gov, or my Senate phone, which is a cell phone, so they can call it or text it. And, if I'm on the campaign trail, my campaign literature actually includes my personal number. To me, right, it doesn't matter how you get a hold of me. I want to be accessible. That's super important to me. And I think super important to making our district better is by letting everyone weigh in.
Yep, absolutely. If people want to put like a sign in their yard or go knock on doors or whatever,
Mhm.
how do they find you for that?
So it's HeidiBalderree.com. So HeidiBalderree.com, and there you can sign up to volunteer. And we've got volunteers who are door knocking and making phone calls. They do that every week. You can do it any day, and I can get you a yard sign. I'm happy to bring it to you. And there are lots of opportunities to serve. If you want to come walk with me in one of the upcoming parades in Eagle Mountain or Saratoga Springs, I'd love to have you join me. And there's just a myriad of ways to help. So HeidiBalderree.com, and that's a great way to help. And I would really appreciate your support.
Yeah, we'll also put a link wherever we post this video just so people can find it. Because yeah, it took me a little bit of time to figure out where all the R's and E's go at the end. So
For
uh,
sure, for sure.
yeah. All right. Well, this has been really fun. It's been good to catch up, Heidi, and yeah, I'm hoping to see you get through that primary and continue to serve us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chuck. It's great to be here. And I thank you so much for your time.